Hello family. Welcome to Morala Stories, your home for gripping African tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Now sit back and enjoy the drama. The rain tore through the streets of Port Harcourt like a wounded beast, its claws ripping at tin roofs and sending sheets of water cascading into the gutters. Thunder rattled the sky, and lightning slashed through the dark clouds overhead, illuminating the drenched city in brief, ghostly flashes. People scurried for cover beneath tattered awnings, umbrellas bending inside out, while the pavement turned slick and treacherous. Vendors shouted above the roar, but their voices were swallowed by the storm. Every footstep sent cold water gushing into shoes, and every breath tasted of damp concrete and gasoline-fouled air. It felt as though the heavens themselves conspired to wash the city clean or drown it altogether. At the center of this tempest struggled Ngozi. Once a child full of the promise of university lectures and bright futures, she now moved with painstaking effort through the torrential downpour. Polio had taken her mobility long ago, leaving her legs weakened and her gait unstable. A battered umbrella, its ribs bent beyond repair, balanced precariously in one hand. In the other, she held the handle of a small metal cart on which rows of oranges, her meager livelihood, stood stacked in a neat pyramid. Each step was a battle against the current of muddy water that threatened to tip her over. Yet she pressed on, because if she didn't, tomorrow's rent would go unpaid, and her little son would have nothing. For a moment, Ngozi paused beneath a flickering streetlight, the bulb sputtering as if warning her away. She wiped rain from her eyes and surveyed the puddle-choked intersection. In better weather, this corner was a hive of activity. Taxi drivers shouting destinations, market women trading gossip and fresh fish, children chasing each other with coins clutched in small fists. But real life had retreated inside. The wind howled along empty sidewalks, and the rumble of distant thunder was the only soundtrack to her struggle. She set her jaw, squared her shoulders, and stepped forward into the deluge. The bus came without warning. Its brakes screeched, a deafening scream that cut through the rain. Droplets of water exploded against Ngozi's face as the vehicle hurtled past. She clutched the cart handle tighter, but the force of the passing bus created a wave that rolled the cart's contents into the flooded street. Oranges scattered like bright buoys in a churning river. One by one, they were crushed under tires, bursting open to stain the water with vivid orange pulp. She fell to her knees, fingers cold and numb, desperately scooping up the fruits. Each salvaged orange was a lifeline, each lost one a dagger to her heart. Tears mingled with the rain, indistinguishable in their warmth. "Move it, woman!" a harsh voice barked from above. A moto rider had leaned out, swearing at her as he revved his engine. "You're blocking the road." His passenger laughed, the sound cruel and hollow. They sped off, leaving behind a blast of dirty spray and a mocking echo. Ngozi barely registered their presence. Her entire world had narrowed to the prism of soggy citrus in her palms. She glanced toward the sidewalk, hoping for help, even a single kind soul, but saw only backs turned and heads bowed. No one would lend a hand, and no one would slow their stride. Memories flickered in the recesses of her mind, the day she graduated with honors, tears of pride mingling with her parents' congratulations, before polio struck. The night her son was born, his wail the sweetest sound she had ever heard, before tragedy stole him away. The hours she spent in hospitals, begging for affordable treatment, before bureaucracy closed every door. All those hopes and heartbreaks converged as she refilled her basket and adjusted her broken umbrella. She whispered a prayer, one practiced in defeat and remembrance. "God, don't let me fail now." A sudden roar filled the street, engines multiplied, their pitch a mixture of authority and urgency. Ngozi looked up and froze. A long convoy of black SUVs slithered around the corner, wheels slicing through the water like knives. Sirens wailed, but not in the frantic cry of an ambulance. This was a controlled, commanding sound that cut through the storm's chaos. The lead vehicle's windows were tinted so darkly that they seemed like blind eyes, unseeing and impenetrable. Rain pelted their glossy hoods, creating a staccato rhythm that echoed against closed storefronts. Time slowed as the convoy rolled to a near halt, blocking both lanes. Pedestrians gaped from doorways, and street vendors peered from behind plastic curtains, their wares abandoned. Motors switched off with abrupt clicks, and for a beat, all was quiet except the rain. From within the second SUV, one window cracked open just enough to reveal a pair of eyes. Sharp, compassionate, troubled, eyes that searched the flooded street with urgent curiosity. Through the blur of rain, Ngozi felt them find her. Her heart pounded, each beat a thunderclap in her chest. The eyes belonged to a young woman, her skin dark as the storm clouds, her expression etched with something Ngozi had not seen in a long time, genuine concern. For a moment, the world fell into a tense stillness. Ngozi, fragile and soaked to the bone, stood with her cart half emptied, face streaked with tears and rain. Across the waterlogged street, the governor's daughter knelt behind the tint, her hand pressed against the glass as if to bridge the chasm of privilege. The engines idled, waiting for orders, but the girl behind that window seemed suspended in indecision. Time measured itself by the dripping of water from the SUV's windshield, and every drop felt like eternity. Then, with a screech of tires and a rev of engines, the convoy lurched forward. The window slid shut, and the tinted glass became impenetrable once more. The SUVs surged ahead, cutting through puddles that exploded behind them, and disappeared down the soaked asphalt as quickly as they had arrived. The moment was gone, but its impact reverberated through Ngozi's bones. She clutched her remaining oranges to her chest and stared at the empty street. The rain continued its relentless assault, but now each drop carried a glimmer of something beyond despair, a spark of recognition that someone with power, had seen her. She exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding and straightened her back. Mud spattered her ankles, and exhaustion made her knees tremble. Yet in her heart, the memory of those troubled eyes ignited a fragile hope. For all she had lost, and for all the battles yet to come, she knew one thing with absolute clarity: she was not invisible. Bracing herself against the wind, Ngozi raised her umbrella, broken though it was, and began to push her cart forward once more, each step a testament to her resilience. The storm roared around her, but inside, she carried a quiet flame, fanned by a single act of compassion in the heart of the tempest. Some distance ahead, the faint glow of a street lamp cut through the haze, illuminating soggy plastic tarps and overturned crates. Under its dim light, a row of makeshift stalls still beckoned customers, vendors huddled beneath torn awnings, calling out tomorrow's promises: plantains, tomatoes, fresh catfish from the creek. Ngozi paused, taking in the scene. This was her world now, a battlefield of survival where Naira mattered. She tightened her grip on the cart's handle and remembered why she refused to let the storm defeat her, the memory of her son's laughter echoing through halls, the crisp edges of her university diploma, yellowing with age but heavy with pride. Droplets drummed on the umbrella above her, and she whispered, "I will not give up." With that vow seared into her heart, she lifted her chin, squared her shoulders, and pushed forward into the dark night, determined to find hope here. Inside the second SUV of the governor's convoy, Amara Ibekwe sat perched between leather cushions and tinted windows that shielded her from the world outside. The back seat of the black Jeep was warm, a stark contrast to the storm that raged beyond. She traced raindrops snaking down the glass, each one distorting the bright neon signage and blurred silhouettes of frantic Port Harcourt residents. The faint hum of the engine and the rhythmic sweep of windshield wipers were the only sounds inside her luxurious cage, a promise of comfort somewhere beyond these cold streets. Minutes earlier, she had stepped away from a glittering charity gala at the governor's mansion. Cameras had flashed, reporters had asked her rehearsed questions about women's empowerment, and she had smiled, delivered her lines about compassion, and thanked everyone for their support. Yet now, as the Jeep glided through puddles, the words felt hollow. Her golden bracelet, a gift from her father, glimmered on her wrist, reminding her of the privilege she could never escape. The driver, Chief Okere, stole a glance through the rear-view mirror. "Madam, the roads are completely flooded. Perhaps we should wait for the storm to ease." Amara shook her head. "No. We must return. And drive carefully." "Of course, ma'am." His voice was measured, weary from the day's events, but he obeyed without question. Lightning lit up the sky again, revealing a scene that would shatter Amara's detachment. Across the street, just beyond another lurch of the Jeep, a lone figure moved against the tide of water, pushing a creaking metal cart tipped with oranges. The woman waded through the flooding, legs slick and unstable, brow downcast, her umbrella no more than a ragged shield. Each step was agony, yet each step continued. In that moment, Amara saw something she had never allowed herself to feel: empathy. "Driver!" Amara's voice cut through the haze. "Stop!" Chief Okere raised an eyebrow. "Madam, should I stop the car?" Her command left no room for doubt. With a jolt that rocked Amara's body, The jeep's tires ground against the flooded asphalt until the engine idled. The convoy behind them screeched to a halt, sirens echoing and then powering down. Security officers exchanged hurried whispers in the front seats. Through the tint, Amara's gaze stayed locked on the fruit seller, her dark skin shining wetly in the headlights. A uniformed bodyguard turned to open the rear door. "Madam, it's dangerous out there." Amara was already swinging her door open, heart pounding. Rain immediately drenched her hair, plastering it against her forehead. Her designer coat soaked through in seconds, but she barely noticed. "I must help her," she said, her voice fierce against the storm. "Please, hold my hand." The bodyguard hesitated, but before he could refuse, Amara leaped out, landing in a shallow pool of muddy water. She slipped, nearly falling, but caught herself on the jeep's doorframe. A sharp gasp escaped her as she steadied herself. Chief Okorie climbed out, umbrella extended clumsily against the wind. "Madam, this is highly irregular," he said, his tone a mix of concern and reproach. "It is necessary," Amara replied, teeth chattering from the sudden cold. She started toward the fruit seller, ignoring the protective arms of her security team. "Stay with me," she whispered, more to herself than to them. As she approached, the woman looked up, startled. Her face was etched with exhaustion and disbelief. Oranges lay scattered at her feet, some crushed, the pulp mixing with the standing water like spilled jewels. She froze, hand trembling on the cart handle. Amara knelt beside her, ignoring the frosty bark of her knees against the filth. "Hello," she called softly. "I'm Amara. Can I help you?" The fruit seller's eyes widened. She shook her head, voice tight. "No, you can't help me." Amara smiled gently and reached for the nearest orange. She lifted it carefully, examining it for damage. "Let me help you gather these," she said, voice steady. She began picking up the oranges one by one, handing them to the woman's outstretched hand. Why are you doing this?" the woman stammered. Amara paused, looking into her wet, wary eyes. "Because someone should," she replied simply. "Because it's the right thing to do." Security officers hovered nearby, umbrellas held over Amara's head in a protective circle, but she waved them back. "Please step back." She doubled her focus on the oranges, sorting the bruised from the salvageable, stacking them neatly. The woman let out a small sob of frustration. "I don't deserve this." Amara stopped, placing a hand on the woman's shoulder. "Everyone deserves kindness," she said firmly. "You are not invisible." A sudden burst of thunder rattled the world. Streetlights flickered, and passers-by paused, pulling out phones. Someone photographed the scene, a wealthy governor's daughter kneeling in the gutter, hands dirty, saving another woman's livelihood. Amara felt a pang of vulnerability but pressed on. When the last orange was secured, she removed her silk scarf, now soaked, and wrapped it around the woman's shoulders. They stood together, two dark-skinned women connected by a moment that transcended class and station. Amara offered her arm. "Let me walk with you," she said. The woman hesitated, then leaned in. They moved slowly through the water, Amara supporting her. Onlookers stilled, watching the tableau of compassion under an angry sky. Flashbulbs popped, the governor's convoy stood abandoned, their purpose shifted. By the time they reached the curb, Amara was shivering violently, her shoes coated in sludge. But in her chest, a warmth blossomed, something real, something fierce. The woman turned to her, voice soft. "Thank you, Amara." She smiled, grateful tears glinting on her cheeks. "You're welcome." Amara glanced back at the convoy. The tinted windows and polished exteriors felt meaningless now. She would face her father and the cameras later. For now, she had done what needed doing. The bodyguard approached, concern etched on his face. "Madam." Amara nodded at the woman. "I'll call you tomorrow," she said. "Take care." She turned and strode back toward the jeep, each step careful on the slick pavement. Security formed a protective barrier around her, umbrellas shielding her from the rain. Someone handed her a fresh scarf and slippers. Inside the jeep, warmth enveloped her once more. Chief Okorie glanced at her in the mirror. "Madam." She took a deep breath, smoothing her hair. "Drive home." He nodded, and the jeep lurched forward, sirens silent. Amara pressed her hand to the wet window, staring at the disappearing fruit seller. In that reflection, she saw a new version of herself, one unafraid to break protocol, to show humanity, to admit that privilege without action was meaningless. As the convoy brought her back to the governor's mansion, Amara closed her eyes and vowed that this single act would not be an accident, a one-time gesture. She would not look away again. Amara sank into the seat, rainwater dripping from her hair onto the floor mat. Her heart pounded, adrenaline and shame mingling. Chief Okari draped a spare blazer over her shoulders, his silent concern more comforting than any words. The headlights of the jeep cast long reflections on the water, turning puddles into molten gold. Amara wondered how many oranges she'd saved, and how many lives she might yet touch. A soft knock came from her father's driver, holding a folded note, instructions to apologize. Amara grabbed the note and stared at the shredded pieces spinning away in the swirling currents outside. She whispered, "No regrets." Before the driver closed the door, Amara whispered, "Thank you for reminding me who I want to be." She exhaled, letting compassion replace her fear. The note crumbled between her fingers as the jeep rolled away into the night. Rain hammered the city like a furious drumbeat, each drop striking hard against windshields and leather hides. The convoy ground to a halt at the edge of the flooded intersection, water swirling around the tires as if determined to pull them under. Inside the jeep, Amara Ibekwe's breath came in ragged gasps. She barely noticed the warmth she'd left behind. Her pulse thundered louder than the storm. Through the tinted window, she watched the fruit seller's cart heave under the weight of rushing water. A firm hand settled on Amara's shoulder. The lead bodyguard, Captain Musa, leaned close. "Madam," he warned, voice low, "you must not." Amara's eyes snapped to him. His crisp uniform was drenched, and his umbrella shook against the gale. "Stand down," she snapped, shoving his outstretched hand aside. Her tone brooked no argument. "This is between her and me." Musa's jaw clenched, but he stepped back, umbrella bobbing like a wilted flower. A second guard moved to shield Amara's legs, but she brushed past him, abandoning all pretense of protocol. The rain soaked her silk blouse through in seconds, darkening it to a deep, sodden purple. She ignored the chill that lanced through her bones. Outside, a crowd had gathered under makeshift awnings and tattered umbrellas. Phones were raised like offerings, flashlights stabbing through the gloom. A woman in a bright headscarf gasped, "Is that the governor's daughter?" A man beside her nodded, mouth half open. "She's leaving the convoy in this mess?" Another voice rang out above the storm, "Madam, it's dangerous. The water is deep." But Amara strode forward, boots sinking into muddy water. She kicked them off without hesitation, letting her toes curl in the cold. Every step was agony as slippery debris clung to her feet, but she pressed on, heedless of her soaked stockings. Storm water lapped at her hem, dragging at her as if determined to stop her progress. She focused on the trembling figure at the cart's edge. The fruit seller knelt, clutching her basket, chest heaving. Oranges floated around her like marooned buoys in a trembling sea. Amara broke into a run, shards of her conscience propelling her. She darted across the waterlogged street, heedless of oncoming traffic now halted by her impetuous act. Water splashed around her ankles, stained by petrol and grime, but she hardly noticed. The storm roared in her ears, and her own heartbeat was a drum of reckoning. The fruit seller snapped her head up, eyes wide with terror. She stumbled backward, pressing against a rusted guardrail. "No, please don't," she cried, voice cracking. Amara skidded to a halt before her, body tense. "It's okay," she shouted, tone gentle despite the gale. "I'm here to help." Trembling fingers clutched the cart's handle. The fruit seller's voice was muffled by the wind. "You'll get hurt. You'll get us both hurt." Amara crouched, careful to keep her back to the roaring traffic. "I've already been hurt," she said, voice soft. "What matters now is that you're safe." Her words were swallowed by thunder, but they carried over the heads of the crowd. Curiosity rippled through the onlookers as Amara knelt beside the scattered oranges. She reached into the water and lifted one, its skin slick with mud. The fruit seller flinched, then watched as Amara wiped it clean on her soaked blouse. The crowd murmured, "She's picking it up herself. Look at her hands. She didn't send a servant." One man held his phone higher, shouting, "Get back! Let her work!" Amara turned, meeting his gaze through the rain. "Step back," she commanded. I need room. He dipped back, and others followed. A pocket of space opened around her and the fruit seller. Amara's trembling fingers bunched the scattered oranges into a neat pile. Each one represented a small fortune to this woman, a day's worth of wages, or her son's next meal. A strand of Amara's hair clung to her cheek. She brushed it away, ignoring the sting of rainwater in her eyes. She bent again and fed the fruit seller each salvaged orange. "Here," she said, "take it." The fruit seller hesitated, then took the orange. Her knuckles whitened around it. Tears mingled with rain on her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered, voice raw. Amara paused, noticing the quiver of her limbs. She peeled off her own expensive scarf, its silk now worthless against the storm, and wrapped it around the woman's shoulders. The faded gold threads glimmered against mud-splattered fabric. The fruit seller laughed weakly, a choked sound of disbelief. They worked in tandem, Amara retrieving oranges, the woman stacking them in the basket. Mud clung to their clothing and skin, but neither flinched. The crowd watched in stunned silence, breath held between thunderclaps. From somewhere above, a drone buzzed, capturing the scene in high definition. A single camera angle locked onto Amara's kneeling form, her silhouette framed by swirling rain. The fruit seller raised her head, eyes meeting Amara's in a moment of shared humanity. A flash of lightning illuminated them, the governor's daughter and the disabled fruit seller kneeling together in the gutter. It was the image that would sear itself into the public consciousness. A professional photographer snapped the shutter. Tears mingled on Amara's cheeks. She had no idea who would see this image, or how it would be used. All she knew was that nothing, not her father's demands, nor her bodyguard's warnings, nor the angry sky, could hold her back from this simple act of compassion. When the last orange was safe, Amara rose, sending water cascading from her soaked skirt. She offered a hand to the fruit seller, who accepted it with trembling fingers. They stood together, two unlikely allies forged by rain and purpose. The crowd parted, creating a corridor of astonished witnesses. Phones recorded every step they took. Shouts of praise and disbelief echoed, "She's amazing! What a good human! Governor's daughter with no shame!" Amara turned to face the onlookers. Rain plastered her hair, and her clothes clung to her frame, but she stood tall. "This is not a spectacle," she called out, voice carrying. "This is what kindness looks like." Silence fell, save for the rain. Bystanders lowered their phones, as though ashamed of voyeurism. A few nodded reverently, others wiped tears from their eyes. As if on cue, the photographer approached, holding up his camera. Amara lifted her hand, gesturing to the fruit seller. "Let this be your face," she said softly. "Let the world see your strength." The photographer snapped again. The moment crystallized, a freeze frame that transcended politics, privilege, and prejudice. It captured a governor's daughter defying orders, shattering conventions, and kneeling in solidarity with the marginalized. In that instant, the storm's roar fell away. The only thing that mattered was the bond between two women, standing in the gutter, drenched and unbowed. By the time the convoy's engines roared back to life, the image had already begun its journey across the city's networks and into the hearts of its people. It was a rebellion against apathy, broadcast in high resolution, and destined to echo far beyond these flooded streets. As the SUVs pulled away, the crowd watched until the taillights vanished. Rain continued to fall, but now it felt less like a punishment and more like a baptism, washing away barriers and revealing shared humanity. Later that evening, in her private study, Amara unfolded a printed photograph of the frozen moment. Rain-slicked boots and tear-streaked faces stared back at her. She pressed it to her heart, feeling a gentle vow stir. She would never look away again, remaining determined. The following morning, dawn broke over Port Harcourt with curious calm. In the governor's mansion, white marble halls gleamed under artificial light as aides and press secretaries gathered in hushed urgency. Screens in the media room flickered with the viral footage from the previous night. Amara Ibekwe, knee-deep in rainwater and mud, gathering oranges alongside a disabled fruit seller. The image had spread across social media, news websites, and television channels within hours. Some hailed it as a display of genuine empathy. Others sneered at what they called a manufactured publicity stunt. In the press room, journalists tapped keyboards with rapid intensity. One anchor's voice crackled through speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, last night, the governor's daughter defied her security detail to assist a street vendor in distress. But critics argue this was orchestrated to deflect attention from her father's approval ratings. Political analyst Obi Ease is with us now. Obi, what do you make of this? Obi's face appeared on screen, framed by a wall of books. He adjusted his glasses. This incident highlights the fraught intersection of politics and social media. It humanizes Amara but also raises questions about authenticity. Is this a sincere act of compassion, or a calculated move by the governor's office? Time will tell, but the cynicism is palpable. Across town in a modest apartment, Ngozi pressed a hand to her heart as she listened on her grandmother's radio. Supportive hosts lauded Amara's courage. Skeptics mined her past for scandal. Ngozi remembered the warmth of Amara's hands in the rain and wondered how kindness could be so easily maligned. On a slick news website, a headline blared, "Governor's Daughter Stages Pity Performance." The article showcased images from Amara's charity gala alongside the gutter scene, quoting anonymous insiders who claimed she craved attention. Below, comments poured in. Truthseeker22 sneered, "All for the cameras." Realize wrote, "Watch her spin this." Ibequifax predicted, "This video won't save her father's career." In the mansion's private quarters, Amara awoke to the buzz of her phone. Notifications flashed relentlessly. Interview requests, demands for apologies, praise from strangers, insults from trolls. One text read, "Nice stunt, princess. Don't cry when your designer shoes are ruined." Another declared, "Shameless pandering to boost daddy's polls." Each barb tightened her chest like a vice. Her father's office door burst open. Governor Ibekwe, stern and unyielding, filled the doorway. "Amara," he began, voice cold, "explain this spectacle." She sat on the edge of her bed, dignity intact. "I saw someone in need. I helped her." He paced, ivory cufflinks glinting. "You embarrassed this family and me. Do you realize how my opponents will weaponize this? They'll call me neglectful and insincere." She stood, meeting his gaze. "I didn't do it for politics. I did it because it was right." His frustration cracked. "Right? You risked your life and reputation for what, likes? Headlines. You trampled protocol." Tears stung her eyes. "You call protocol and politics worth more than a human life?" His face softened momentarily, but duty outweighed empathy. "You will issue a public apology, clarifying that your actions were unauthorized." "Understood." She clenched her fists. "I will not apologize for compassion." He slammed the door. Silence settled, as heavy as the rain-soaked night. Later, the governor's press office buzzed with tension. Press Secretary Adeola gathered her team. "We need a genuine apology," she said. The aide drafted, "I regret any alarm my actions may have caused and appreciate those inspired by compassion." Adeola nodded, hoping it honored Amara's intent without undermining it. That afternoon, Amara called her childhood friend Chitty. "You started a movement," he said. "People speak of dignity, not optics." She pressed her phone to her ear, rain still drumming on the balcony. "I won't be silenced," she replied. In Ngozi's marketplace, vendors tuned in to radio broadcasts replaying the footage. A plantain seller sighed, "She knelt for us." A fish vendor smiled through tears. Even her guards watched in awe. Online, volunteers used #LiftEachOther to donate wheelchairs, microloans, and coaching. Amara scrolled through messages of solidarity, each one a ripple of hope. That night, she sat by her rain-streaked window, reading support and scorn alike. Betrayal from her circle stung, but her resolve burned brighter. She would champion those without a platform, consequences be damned. Before drifting to sleep, Amara opened her journal and sketched a plan. She envisioned a mobile market fund that would provide resources, equipment, and mentorship to disabled street vendors across Port Harcourt. She listed NGOs, fundraising events, and a slogan, "Dignity on Wheels." Under flickering lamplight, her pen felt lighter. The storm may have tested her resolve, but it could not extinguish her purpose. The next day dawned crisp and clear, a stark contrast to the storm that had drenched the city and galvanized its attention the night before. In the hush of the governor's foundation office, Amara Ibekwe paced the polished conference room, its glass walls reflecting her restless energy. She had convened a private interview. No press, no spin doctors, just her, Ngozi, and a trusted videographer. They would record the story that the cameras at the intersection had missed, the humanity behind the viral image. Ngozi arrived late, her wheelchair rattling over the marble floor. She wore a simple cotton blouse and jeans, her hair pulled back in a neat braid that revealed a row of faded scars on her calves. Amara rushed forward, shedding her blazer. "Ngozi, thank you for coming," she said, voice warm. She guided her to a leather chair placed in front of a single, soft spotlight that illuminated a bare backdrop. The videographer, a young woman named Ife, adjusted the camera. "Sound check in 3, 2, 1. The red light winked on. "Go ahead, Josiah," she said to the small microphone clipped onto Amara's collar. Amara nodded at Ngozi. "Thank you again for trusting me. I know the world saw your strength in that moment of the rain, but they didn't see your journey to that point. Would you share with us, first, how you began life before polio?" Ngozi inhaled deeply, her voice steady as she leaned forward. "I was born in this city, the eldest of 3. My parents were teachers. My childhood was full of laughter and schoolbooks. I loved numbers. I dreamed of becoming an engineer." She paused, the memory fragile. "But when I was 10, I fell ill with polio. My legs, they stopped working. My parents tried, but the hospital bills were crushing. They left my siblings with my grandmother and moved away, hoping to find work. I stayed, determined to continue. At 13, I graduated top of my class in primary school. But high school wasn't accessible. No ramps, no support. I studied from home," she said, voice soft but unbroken. Amara's eyes filled with tears. "That must have been so hard." Ngozi brushed a tear away. "It was. But I earned a scholarship to university for civil engineering. I wanted to build roads and bridges to connect people. Yet the campus had no elevators, no accessible restrooms. Professors helped when they could, but I felt alone." Amara leaned forward. "After you graduated?" Ngozi's gaze dropped. "I applied everywhere, engineering firms, consultancies, but no one would hire a woman in a wheelchair. I returned home and began selling fruit to survive. It was humbling, but honest work." Amara's voice caught. "And your son?" Ngozi's face shadowed with grief. "A year after selling fruit, I married a gentle artist. We had a son, Tolu. His laugh was my favorite sound. One rainy evening, a bus lost control and hit his stroller. No one stopped. He died before I reached him." Silence fell. Amara reached across and held Ngozi's hand. "I'm so sorry." Ngozi nodded, tears glistening. "That day, I almost gave up. But I promised Tolu I would keep living, for both of us." Amara wiped her eyes. "When you lay there in the gutter, afraid and alone, you didn't deserve that. But that night, you showed the world resilience. I want everyone to hear your true story." The camera rolled as Ngozi smiled weakly. "When you knelt beside me, you reminded me of my promise. You gave me hope." Ife clicked off the camera. Amara and Ngozi watched the raw footage play back, unfiltered and powerful. "I'll share this exactly as it is," Amara whispered. "No edits, no commentary." Ngozi nodded. "My story is life, not a pity case. If it inspires hope, it's worth telling." Over the next hour, they filmed closing reflections. Amara asked, "What do you want people to remember?" Ngozi thought a moment. "That everyone deserves dignity. Disability isn't inability. A single act of kindness can rebuild a soul." By evening, the video was ready. Amara posted it with the caption, "Listen. Sure. Act." Within minutes, views soared. Comments surged beyond politics. Volunteers offered wheelchairs, job opportunities, microloans. Grassroots groups used #DignityOnWheels to organize support. Ngozi watched responses on her grandmother's phone. "Someone's building a ramp for my home," she whispered. Another offered digital design training. Amara smiled through tears. "Your voice is powerful." The next morning, they gathered at the ribbon cutting for Ngozi's new fruit shop, funded entirely by online donors. A bright orange storefront bore her name, Ngozi's Harvest. Ramps flanked the entrance, and a shaded seating area welcomed patrons. Amara stood beside Ngozi as the governor quietly watched. Flashbulbs popped as she cut the ribbon. A gleaming wheelchair rolled into view, chrome gleaming in the sunlight. The crowd cheered. Ngozi rolled forward, beaming. She turned to Amara and hugged her fiercely. "You put me back in the driver's seat." Amara laughed through tears. "You drove here. I only opened the door." Weeks later, Ngozi expanded her vision. She hired 2 other disabled vendors, providing each a stall and share of profits. One, Chinyere, had lost her sight. The other, Emeka, walked with a prosthetic leg. Under the courtyard sunlight, she welcomed them. Chinyere smiled. "You gave me purpose." Emeka added, "Now I can afford my carpentry tools." Their words rang with hope. Amara stood nearby, pride filling her chest. She found her father watching the activity. "Without ceremony," he said, "you were right. Compassion can't be blocked by protocol." Amara nodded, moisture in her eyes. Kindness needs no permission. Behind them, a banner declared, "Dignity on Wheels, Empowering Abilities." Photographers captured every grin, and local journalists noted the shift in tone. What began as controversy ended in community. The story the cameras first missed now shone in every transformed life, in every bold step toward dignity, and in every grateful smile sparked by one simple act of kindness. The movement had only just begun, truly. 1 year later, Port Harcourt's sun rose steadily over a bustling market plaza where Ngozi's Harvest stood as a beacon of hope and resilience. Colorful awnings shaded rows of bright crates filled with produce. The sign above the storefront read, "Ngozi's Harvest, fresh fruit, full dignity," in vibrant orange letters. Ramps on either side allowed wheelchair access, and the wide doorway welcomed every customer without barrier. Morning light danced across the pavement, illuminating families, students, and elderly marketgoers drawn by laughter and promise. Ngozi navigated her wheelchair around her stall with ease, greeting customers as they approached. She wore a crisp white blouse and a bright headscarf, a symbol of both her heritage and newfound confidence. "Good morning, Mr. Jide," she called to a regular who pushed a cart laden with charcoal. "Your usual mangoes." He nodded, beaming. "And how are you today, Ngozi? Your shop is thriving." She smiled warmly. "Thanks to everyone's support. Would you like a sample?" A few steps away, Chinyere, her visually impaired colleague, arranged a tray of sliced watermelon on a table. Her fingers moved deftly to position each piece. She tapped a small bell to signal readiness. "Samples here," she announced in a clear voice. A group of passers-by used their phones to record the moment, marveling at her confidence. Emeka, who wore a prosthetic leg crafted by a local artisan sponsored through the Dignity Project, assisted customers with heavy bags. "Here you go, ma'am," he said to a young mother. "Be careful crossing the street." The mother thanked him with a grateful nod, her toddler reaching for a bright tangerine. A freelance local journalist, Obinna, approached Ngozi, notebook in hand. "Ngozi, your harvest is a model of inclusive business. Can you tell me what drives you today?" Ngozi's eyes sparkled. "I want everyone to have the dignity I fought for," she said. "We hire people with disabilities, train them, and pay fair wages. This is more than fruit, it's freedom." Obinna scribbled furiously. "And your employees?" She wheeled over to Chinyere and Emeka. "Come here," she called. "Share your experience." Chinyere smiled and spoke boldly. "I once thought blindness was the end of my story. Here, I have purpose and respect." Emeka nodded. "My prosthetic leg used to feel like a burden, but now it's my tool for independence. I coach carpentry classes and earn my own living." Obinna closed his notebook. "Thank you. The world needs to hear this." As the three posed for a photograph, a convoy of modest white SUVs arrived, bearing dignitaries from the governor's office. Amara Ibekwe emerged, dressed in smart casual attire, her expression radiant. She was followed by her father, Governor Ibekwe, and several officials. The crowd quieted in anticipation. Ngozi wheeled forward and embraced Amara. "Thank you for everything," she said softly. "This shop, these jobs, they changed lives." Amara squeezed her hand. You changed lives. I only helped amplify your voice. She turned to the governor. Dad, meet Chinyere and Emeka. The governor offered a respectful nod. It's an honor to see how this partnership has blossomed. He addressed the assembled crowd. Today, we celebrate the success of Ngozi's harvest and the launch of the Dignity Project's expansion. Our next phase will bring microgrant hubs to Lagos, Enugu, and beyond. Applause erupted. Amara guided her father to the banner behind the stall, the Dignity Project, Empowering Abilities. Reporters pressed their microphones forward. Amara flicked back her hair and began speaking. 1 year ago, we saw the power of compassion in the rain. Today we see compassion in action, through jobs, through dignity, and through community. A photographer captured the scene. Ngozi, Amara, and Governor Ibekwe standing united. Flashbulbs lit up their proud smiles. Later that afternoon, they moved to a press conference under a shaded pavilion. A long table held nameplates, Ngozi, Amara, Governor Ibekwe, and representatives of partner NGOs. The crowd of reporters hushed as Amara spoke again. The Dignity Project will provide grants, equipment, and training to disabled entrepreneurs. We believe in dignity on wheels, mobility for all. An NGO director stood. We've already committed funding for 10 new wheelchair-accessible kiosks in rural areas. Journalists nodded, typing rapidly. Ngozi listened, tears in her eyes. She thought of her son Tolu and the promise she made to him. Now, she was fulfilling that promise not just for herself but for hundreds of others. After the conference, Amara and Ngozi toured a mobile workshop, a converted van stocked with fruit crates, ramps, and business tools. Disabled vendors would travel between markets, selling fresh produce with dignity. Ngozi pressed buttons on the lift, marveling at the engineering. This changes everything, she whispered. As sunset approached, the delegation gathered on the veranda of the foundation's headquarters. String lights twinkled overhead. A catered buffet offered local delicacies. Children of disabled vendors laughed and ran between tables. The mood was festive and heartfelt. Amara raised a glass of palm wine. To Ngozi, she toasted, who taught us that a single act of kindness can spark a movement. The crowd echoed, To Ngozi. Ngozi stood, holding the glass with determined grace. To all who believe in dignity, may we continue to lift each other, now and always. They drank, and laughter filled the air. That morning, Ngozi welcomed intern Lara, a former microgrant recipient, who reminded her about the mentorship meeting that evening. Amina, a polio survivor, will share how she opened her bakery, Lara said. Ngozi nodded. I'll speak. Community needs real stories. Lara smiled and hurried away. At midday, Ngozi convened 5 new entrepreneurs under a shaded awning. She traced her path from hawker to business owner. Resilience comes from our bonds. Share your challenges, and we rise together, she urged. The group exchanged determined nods. After the foundation event's ribbon-cutting, Amara and Ngozi reviewed project feedback on a tablet. Testimonials glowed. I got my first loan because you proved someone cared. I found my voice through your training. Amara tapped the screen. This is our victory. Ngozi smiled. And just the start. As dusk fell, Ngozi addressed the gathering once more. When someone lifts you in your darkest hour, you gain the strength to lift others. Thank you for lifting me. Warm applause followed. Under twinkling lights, Amara closed the evening. If you have power, use it to lift others, not to look away. Standing ovations broke out. In that moment, the promise of kindness spread beyond headlines, rooted in every grateful heart. That night, rain returned to bless the movement. Streets gleamed under streetlights, reflecting faces transformed by dignity and hope. Port Harcourt slept as dreams of a kinder future took root in every heart awakened by empathy. The end. Loved the story? Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and become part of the Marala Stories family. Your support helps us bring more powerful African tales to life. Thanks for watching. We can't wait to share the next one with you. See you soon.